Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really moving past that old binary view of sexuality. Straight or gay, that's it. We're diving into how things look now, academically, sociologically. It's a spectrum. Really complex, lots of dimensions. So our mission today, break down the four main parts of the spectrum, look at the tools researchers use to measure it, and why all this complexity points towards needing bigger structural fixes. And the big takeaway for you, right up front. Orientation isn't just one thing. It's your feelings inside, what you do, how you identify, and yeah, those parts don't always match up.
Okay, so to start digging into that complexity, our sources kept bringing up this quadripartite model, 4 parts. Basically, orientation isn't a single track. It operates on 4 different axes, and they can diverge. You got sexual attraction, who you desire, then romantic attraction, who you want that deep emotional bond with.
Right. Different things.
Third is sexual behavior, your actual actions. And fourth, sexual identity, so the label you choose. And what's really key there straight away is how that messes with the data we collect. Think of official surveys, like from the ONS in the UK. They often only ask about identity.
Just the label.
Exactly. And claiming an identity, that takes, a certain level of comfort, social acceptance. So if you only measure identity, you're almost definitely undercounting people who feel non-heterosexual attraction or have related experiences, but don't use the label.
Ah, right. So the internal reality versus the public label, that gap could be huge. To make sense of that divergence, the sources highlight something called the split attraction model, SAM.
Yeah, SAM is crucial. It basically says, hold on, that old assumption that your sexual and romantic feelings have to point the same way, that's not necessarily true. And this is super important for understanding the asexual spectrum, or ACE. Sam lists talk about, say, being homoromantic, asexual.
Meaning
someone might feel little or no sexual pull, but still feel strong romantic desire, that emotional connection, just for people of the same gender. The attractions are split.
Okay, got it. So if it's this complex, how do we even measure it? You mentioned earlier models had limits. Kinsey, for instance.
Right. Kinsey was groundbreaking. But yeah, our sources point out it was pretty locked into a male-female, gay-straight, binary framework.
Yeah.
Didn't capture all this nuance. The next big leap was probably the Klein sexual orientation grid, KSAR.
Klein grid, okay. What did it do differently?
Klein's really smart move was adding time, a temporal axis. So it didn't just ask about now. It looked at 7 different dimensions, things like behavior, yes, but also fantasy, emotional preference, social preference, identity across the past, the present, and your ideal future.
Ideal future. So like aspirational identity.
Kind of, yeah. It was the first major tool to really build in the idea of sexual fluidity. The idea that orientation isn't fixed. It can shift and evolve over a person's life.
And we're seeing proof of that fluidity in the demographics, right? Especially with younger generations. The numbers for Gen Z in the U.S. are pretty staggering. Like 20.8% identify as LGBT+. And within that, 15% of Gen Z specifically identify as bisexual. 15%. That's a huge shift towards acknowledging multigender attraction. It really validates the whole spectrum idea. But wait, if fluidity is normal, part of this spectrum, the research also seems to link it sometimes with tougher mental health outcomes, like depression, substance use. Is that saying fluidity itself is the problem?
No, absolutely not. That's a really important distinction. The research doesn't suggest fluidity is inherently harmful. The best explanation we have comes from the minority stress model.
Okay.
It argues that those negative health outcomes aren't because someone is fluid. They're because of the external environment. Societal pressure, prejudice, lack of acceptance, trying to figure yourself out when the world is hostile or confusing. That's where the stress comes from. The problem isn't internal, it's external pressure.
So societal intolerance is the driver. And that pressure probably isn't the same for everyone, is it? It hits different people differently.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final, really critical piece modern scholarship demands we look at. Intersectionality.
Intersectionality.
We have to shift focus. Stop trying to pinpoint the problem within someone's identity, and instead look at how different systems of oppression, racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, classism, ableism, anti-immigrant sentiment, how they interlock and compound each other.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Think about, say, a transgender woman of color who's also an immigrant trying to get health care. She's not just facing transphobia. She might also face racism in the clinic, language barriers, because she's an immigrant, maybe economic barriers. These aren't separate issues. They weave together to create massive, sometimes insurmountable, structural barriers.
Okay, so putting it all together for you, the listener. This complex spectrum, the reality of fluidity, the harm caused by external prejudice, and the way different biases intersect.
Mm.
It all points in one direction. It means we need to focus resources less on just documenting problems and more on changing the structures. Structural policy changes, creating what the sources call facilitative environments, places where exploring identity and change is safe and normal.
Yeah, supporting people through that developmental process instead of penalizing them for it.
And maybe the most interesting final thought here, the fact that modern tools like Klein's grid or newer ones like the Coleman model actually ask about your ideal self-identification. It suggests orientation isn't just a snapshot of who you are right now. It's maybe also about the journey, about growth, about who you aspire to be, something to think about.